Mental health. My name is Kitsiri Samarasinghe. In the backdrop of COVID-19 lockdowns, social distancing, non-access to our friends and relatives, the economic instability, as well as the resulting chaos and uncertainty, I wish to share certain thoughts which may be beneficial to anyone in order to maintain the health and the mental health, especially during these troubled times. Let me give an outline of this presentation first. We will quickly discuss the ideas of health, then mental health, and the mind-body interaction, and how these ideas can be used to manage the mental well-being or mental health. First, when we try to define health, it is not really an absence of a disease, it's broader than that. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, social and spiritual well-being. You can see there are four aspects of health. Four aspects of health in this sentence. The physical aspect of it, the physical health, mental health, the social health, social aspect, and the spiritual aspect. When all four areas are in balance, that state of well-being is known as health. However, if there is a disturbance to any of these aspects, it can propagate, affecting the health of the person. Let's say the pandemic situation we are in now have disturbed the social aspect of our health, and the mind will learn about it. Mind will learn about the new social scenario, for example, the social distancing. And as the mind learns, this gets disturbed, resulting in some disturbance in the mental well-being of the person. It may not happen always, but if not properly managed, this disturbance can propagate. And it can be worse if it propagates from mental well-being, mental health to affect the physical health of the person. I will leave the spiritual part out of our discussion, but a quick word about it. Depending on the spiritual aspect of the person, spiritual beliefs of the person, the propagation of the disturbance from mental to physical will be different. The tolerance of the disturbance may be mediated by the spiritual health of the person. But since that aspect is not in the mainstream of our discussion, we will leave that out for the moment, and we will discuss between the mental and the physical health aspects of it, how they interact. Before we move further, let's see what mental health means. According to the World Health Organization, mental health is a state of well-being in which individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. You can see there is a sequence of flow in this sentence. So I'll break it down. It says it's a state of well-being. And that state of well-being will lead to the person to realize his or her own abilities. And that can lead to ability to cope up with the normal stresses of the life, which will lead to productivity. And that will lead to contribution to the community. So they are linked in a sequential manner. So the mental state of well-being will produce all these effects. And this is why the mental health is of very prime importance for the person, not only for the person, for the family, and not only for the family, for the society and the country. So based on that definition, we can see mental health is more broad than just absence of any mental illness. Broader than that. And it is a state of well-being, and it is closely connected to the physical health and also the behavior of the person. How is it getting connected to the physical health? Let's look at the picture again. The disturbance, external disturbance, has disturbed the social well-being, and the mind learns about it, and the mind gets disturbed. Thought process may be disturbed, and we now have to discuss how it can affect the physical health. So we will focus on this link, mind and the body connection, and that will give us some understanding of how the thought process can cause changes to the physical well-being of the person. So mind-body interaction is an important aspect that we should all know. The mind is closely connected with the body. What is this connection? Let's have a look. The mind is responsible for maintaining the body. Therefore, it's always listening, attending and taking care of the needs of the body. And at the same time, the body is listening and responding to the thoughts of the mind. So, in the mind-body coupling, the mind is taking the meanings out of all the experiences. Mind has emotions, beliefs, it has a self-image of the person, it generates instincts as and when necessary, it formulates habits, and all those are part of the thought process handled by the mind, and it's closely coupled with the body as well as the external world. What is the coupling? Here in the brain, it is a high-speed input-output processor which will provide the mind an interface with two things. Interface with the body, physical body, and also the interface with the external world through the eyes, ears, nose, the tongue, and the physical touch. So that interface, input-output interface, is provided by the brain. The mental thought process here is represented there. And the physical body being linked, this is a physical body being linked to the mind through the brain, through the input-output processor. Therefore, this link between mental to physical is represented by this connection between the heart and the brain. On one side of the link, we have the mental thought process here, identified by this word psycho, the psychology, the study of the behavior, is related with the mind. Then, on the other end, this end, the interface, which is the brain, is in control of three subsystems which are tightly coupled with the physical body. What are the three subsystems? The nervous system, the endocrine system, and the immune system. These three subsystems are being driven or being controlled by the brain. That is the physical body end. This is the mind end of the relationship. So that arrow has two ends. You can see the psycho end and the other end known as NEI end. I will quickly highlight what these three subsystems are in charge of. Understanding that will help us to see how the psychological process, the thought process, affects the body. We call it psycho, neuro, endocrine, immune system, PNEI system. System consists of 4 areas. The mental part of it, the mind, nervous system, endocrine system, and the immune system. We look closely into these subsystems. The mind, which is the psycho part, represents this thought engine that regulates the behavior of the person. Then the endocrine system is responsible for hormone generation and hormone management part of the body. There are multiple glands that produce hormones, and we know those hormones regulate the metabolism, the growth, the development, the tissue functions, sexual function, reproduction, sleep, and the mood, and other things. They are controlled by the hormones. So increase and decrease of hormone levels in the blood can make a difference in the behavior. This system is known as endocrine system of the body. And the other system, nowadays most important, especially in the pandemic scenario, the immune system, which consists of the fighting system of the body against any invasion, any bacteria or virus or any kind of other cells invading the body. It is the immune system fighting back. It consists of organs and processes that provide resistance to infection and resistance to toxins. And you know, these organs include the main organ, thymus, then the bone marrow and the lymph nodes. Together, the T cells will be produced and a fight back will be launched. Especially in the scenario we are in today, maintaining a healthy immune system is very important. We should never let down the immune system's ability to go down. We should never allow it, because at any time the pandemic may catch us, and it is the immune system which should be strong to fight back. Then the nervous system consists of nerves and neurons, and the wiring, that's the wiring actually, that transmits signals between different parts of the body. So you can see the thought engine, thought process is here, and this is related to the mind, and other three systems are related to the body. So in the mind-body interface, which is actually the brain is in control of the release of the hormones and the fight back process of the immune system and the messaging system known as the nervous system. So the NEI subsystems shown here, they intercommunicate with each other and maintain equilibrium in the body. The endocrine system and the immune system are linked by cytokines and hormones. Cytokines are kind of signaling molecules that mediate and regulate immunity, inflammation and the blood generation. Then the immune system and nervous system are again linked by cytokines and neuropeptides. These neuropeptides are small protein-like molecules used by neurons to communicate with each other. In fact, they are signaling molecules, and they link these two subsystems. And again, nervous system and the endocrine system linked by hormones as well as neuropeptides. So when the normal mental well-being is present in the mind, the psycho part is regulating these three subsystems. These three subsystems, they are maintaining an equilibrium known as homeostasis. So these three are actually homeostatic control systems. Their responsibility is to maintain good equilibrium between the variables in the physical body. So when the mental well-being is there, then the intercommunication between these three homeostatic control systems are very smooth, and they will maintain the equilibrium of the variables in the physical body. So that process which maintains the stability of the body's internal environment in response to any changes to external conditions, that is known as homeostasis. When the good mental well-being is there, the homeostasis system maintains the body in a very regular, smooth, functional manner. What happens when the normal well-being, mental well-being is disturbed? Which means that the psycho part is getting disturbed by a disturbance. That disturbance is normally known as a stressor. And that is the time when this homeostasis system is getting affected. Homeostasis system is getting affected. What is the normal situation of the homeostasis system and what is the affected situation? Let's discuss the two. In the normal situation, the variables of the body, let me give you a few example variables. The temperature, the blood pH level, blood pressure, blood sugar, that kind of variables. Consider any such variable, for example. Suppose that variable goes out of balance due to some external impact. If the variable gets imbalanced, then there is this feedback control loop, this homeostasis control loop, which will correct the imbalance and bring the variable to its nominal value. So it goes through these receptors, the sensors, it will sense, then compare with the set value, and then corrective signal will be generated as an effector to bring the variable back to normal. And this is continuously happening in our body, in our bodies. All the time, homeostasis control loops are on and they are working. And that is assuming the normal mental well-being is present. Supposing there are disturbance to the normal mental well-being, the disturbance will apply to the control center and this feedback control loop starts malfunctioning, which means some critical variables of the body will not be properly maintained at equilibrium or at the values they should be. So in response to the external variations of temperature or various parameters, the body will not be properly adjusting. Therefore, for the homeostasis system and the three homeostatic control systems to function properly, the mental well-being is very important. So the control center should be allowed to do the normal control as it should be. Supposing that any thought process going in the mind is affecting there and affecting the smooth control of this loop, homeostasis loop, then that scenario is known as a stress. And this is how the stress is defined. Any physical, mental or emotional demand which tend to disturb the homeostasis of the body. That is called the stress. So long as the thought process is smooth and does not disturb the proper functioning of the homeostasis loops of the body, then you are not stressed. The moment the thought process is disturbing the homeostasis loop, then you are stressed. And when the homeostasis is disturbed, lot of physical effects starts appearing, and you can see those physical effects are in response to that thought process, the new thought process, whatever caused the change. So that impact which caused the change is called the stressor, and the situation where homeostasis is disturbed is known as the stress situation. This is the way we have to understand how the stress set in, having an impact on the body. Under a stressful situation, the thought engine will start thinking stressful thoughts. For example, you hear the news and hear about the current situation of the pandemic becomes worse. And when that kind of thoughts are now going on within the mind, the stress scenario will set in, and that thought process will start interfering or affecting the three homeostatic control systems here. And the homeostatic control systems will release set of hormones known as stress hormones to the blood. And those stress hormones will prepare you for explosive activity. In fact, they will energize you beyond normal so that you can make a quick response. This is essential in a real emergency scenario. That's why the body is prepared that way. So, stress hormones will be circulating within the blood, energizing the body for a quick action, quick remedial action against the stressor. These physical effects will be visible then. What is below in this are the names of those stress hormone families like adrenaline, cortisol, catecholamines, testosterone and HGH. Certain combination of these hormones will be released to the blood, and these physical effects listed here will start to become visible. For example, the muscle tension, faster breathing, increased heart rate. They are indications that the body is prepared and energized or activated now for quick action against the stressor. So this is the way of fighting back against the stressor, the natural fight back strategy of the body. Look at the graph here. The horizontal axis is the stress level and the person's performance plotted in the vertical axis. And so long as the stress level is somewhere here, there is what is known as the healthy tension or healthy stress, and certain performance will be there. In order to perform day-to-day activities, certain amount of blood hormones, stress hormones may be necessary to get the jobs done. Here, if the stress is so much on the person, the level may be beyond this threshold, level may be excessive, and then the person feels exhaustion and ill health, and performance will go down. So, too high levels of stress is bad anyway. But there can be another situation where the stress is raised to a level like this, and then it is maintained. Or stress may be raised to a level like here, and it can be maintained. How can it be maintained? Because the mind does not realize that the situation which caused the stress has not gone away. The mind has the awareness that the stressor is still present. So long as that awareness, that belief is there in the mind, the stress hormones will not be taken out of the blood. They will continue to circulate in the blood. And that is not the normal response of the body. That is not a normal situation, in fact. The normal situation is the stressor will initially activate the body for quick response, and as a result, the stressor should go away, stressful situation should go away, and then when the mind knows that, the mind will command the three homeostasis control systems to become normal. And the stress hormones released to the blood will be purged or will be removed from the blood, and things become normal. So from time to time, when stress is there, the hormone levels, stress hormones level in the blood will rise, and then when the mind perceives that the stressor is gone, stressful situation is gone, the stress hormones will be purged or removed from the blood, and that is what is expected. That is how the system has been designed. However, what if the mind does not feel, mind does not perceive that the stressor is continuous, stressor is gone. Instead, the mind perceives that the stressor is continuously present. For example, the pandemic scenario, where day by day, when you hear the news, you still find it is present and coming closer, not going away for 1 week, then second week, third week, likewise prolonged. Now, then the mind does not see the stressor going away. And as a result, the continuous circulation of stress hormones in the blood may occur, may happen. And this is where physical problems start. By now, the physical impact on the body will be strong, because the endocrine system has released the stress hormones which are continuing to remain in the blood, and they are not supposed to remain in the blood continuously. And when the hormones are continuously present, the nervous system and the immune system will be confused, and they will be out of sequence or out of coordination, and therefore they will not function properly. Slowly, the immunity of the body gets affected. And the most important immunity in a time like this will be affected by what's happening here, what's happening in the mind. So this is the mind-body coordination that happens towards the bad side, towards the worst side, in such a way that the physical body becomes weak in immunity. And also the nervous system is slowly being affected. And I think it is now clear how this will propagate. We discussed up to this point now. So we can see a disturbance to the social well-being can make a disturbance to the mental well-being, and that in return cause a serious disturbance to the physical well-being. And in fact, the immune system, which is very vital at a time like this disturbance we talked about, becoming weak. So now we have seen how the weakening take place and how it propagates from mind to the body. In the outline we finished mental health, and just now we finished the mind-body interaction. So we will be moving to managing mental health. We'll discuss certain techniques that can be effectively used to overcome stressful situations of the mind. Now we can clearly see promoting mental health is very important, and because it will enhance our happiness, self-esteem, our ability to control or enjoy the life, our ability to form loving and supportive relationships, and improve the emotional resilience and physical well-being, and to improve the productivity. So all these benefits will be there if we take care of our mind and pay special attention to the mental health. What are the methods? What are the techniques to do that? In the managing of the mental health, there are two methods. First, number one is change the situation. Let's say a certain situation is stressful. Then one can try to change that external situation. There is a different way to handle. That is, rather than changing the external situation, the person can change his reaction towards the stressor or towards the situation. So two different approaches to cope up with the stressful situations or difficult situations. Let me explain this little more. Consider changing the external situation. There are two approaches under that. One is try to alter the stressor which is causing the stress. Or if you can't alter it, try to avoid the stressor. So those two approaches can be used as a response. The alternative method. changing your reaction, to do that, there are two steps. First is to accept the stressor as it is, and then to adapt to the stressor. So you can see the two opposing approaches. Alter and avoid will be there towards changing the stressful situation. Accept and adapt approach will be there to change internally rather than to change the external stressor. So alter and avoid is towards external approach. Accept, adapt approach is the internal approach. These are known as the 4 A's of managing mental health. 2 A's are related to the external approach. 2 A's are related to the internal approach. We'll see the differences in these approaches. This is the same diagram we discussed earlier. If I list our managing techniques on the right hand side here, this is changing the situation approach. And this is changing your reaction approach. Let's first consider change the situation approach. Now, we will plan something, some method in order to alter the external stressor. Then we implement it. To implement that, the 3 subsystems are already energized by the stress hormones which are present in the blood. The hormones have been released and the body is energized for quick explosive action, and that ability, that strength can be used to alter or avoid the stressor. So some action can be taken, but not always, because in a scenario like the pandemic, altering the external situation may not be practical. It may not be under your control. Avoiding also is a possible approach, but limited. But other than the pandemic, there may be many other situations where altering or avoiding will work. Let's consider this difficult scenario where trying to alter the external pandemic condition or trying to avoid it by hiding, both look fairly difficult task now. Then the mind will try, mind will go for it. Assume that the mind decides to change the situation, then it will take action to implement this. And the mental thought process will activate this way the 3 subsystems to carry out the plan, to alter or avoid. So it will be a loop like this. The plan is carried out and the mind will assess the situation again, and the plan will be further carried out, mind will assess the situation again, and this will go on. And in a high magnitude or large magnitude scenario like the pandemic, will this work? Can a person alter the pandemic? or fully avoid the pandemic by himself or herself. May not be possible. Then this attempt of going through this loop the mind will realize it's futile. Your plans might not work. And when the plans do not work, then the mental thought process here could lead to further and further attempts, making the stress hormone levels in the blood higher and higher. So the action may lead to further stress. And this can end up like a vicious cycle where the stress, in the attempt to reduce the stress, the effect of increasing the stress might occur. Therefore, although these altering methods and avoiding methods are good in certain scenarios, it may not be suitable in a bigger, uncontrollable or big magnitude scenarios like pandemics. So what is the alternative? Can we have an alternative approach? Yes, it's there. It is change your reaction approach. Before moving on to discuss change your reaction approach, another thought about this loop. Sometimes when you try to avoid a stressor but it does not work, subconsciously the mind may resort to some unhealthy ways of avoiding the stressor. Let me give you a list of those unhealthy ways so you can keep it as a checklist to verify whether your mind is subconsciously following such methods. Such methods are to be avoided, in fact. Let me give you a list. Unhealthy reactions or avoidance methods. When the stressors are present, when that loop I showed you is not working, people resort to these things. So these coping strategies are temporarily okay. They look like reducing the stress. But they are not healthy ways because they can cause more damage. They can cause more damage in the long run. So be aware when avoidance techniques, when altering techniques do not work, the mind might start one of these as an avoidance technique. That is because of out of frustration. So once you are aware that these things can happen, keep this as a checklist to make sure that you don't get into any one of these. When this other option of changing your reaction is available, why should we get involved with these unhealthy ways of avoiding the stressor? Let's discuss that better method. Let's look at the principle. Within the thought process running in the mind, we inject or we generate certain thoughts suitable to accept the stressor. Once the mind accepts, then the adaptation process can start. However, it has to be initiated by the mind itself. It may not be well supported. Now, this is the difficulty in implementing this method, because accepting method may not be well supported by the present scenario of the body, because here in the body these subsystems are running active, overactive now, because the blood hormones, the stress hormones are present in the blood. Therefore, these three subsystems are always ready for these activities, not for accepting activity. The body is made or prepared for these actions, not for these actions. Therefore, there will not be much support from the body to implement this procedure. The support or the procedure should originate and be self-supported by the mind itself. This is the difficult part, and this is why some people are unaware about this method. So, once we apply this accept adapt approach and change the mental thought process, as a result of this, there will be cleansing effect through this brain, through the interface on the three subsystems. Once that cleansing effect occurs, what actually happens is that the mind accepts the stressor. Therefore, it starts to perceive that it's not stressful situation anymore. It is not a stressful situation anymore. Then what happens is, as a result of that, the three subsystems here will now take the stress hormones out of the blood, and the three systems become normal and clear. So this is the cleansing effect, or this is the way to reset that heightened state of the body. But unfortunately, it is not supported by that kind of a feedback loop, because this supportive cleansing effect is to be originated in the thought process itself. The body will not be supporting it. So, how do we do that? Maybe the method is clear to you now, but the principle may be clear to you now, but the method of doing it we have to discuss now. Accepting and adapting strategy to drain the stress chemicals, stress hormones out of the blood and repair the immune system. To do that, we need a change in the perception and change in the attitude. It's an internal change. We are not going to change the stressor. The normal thought process of a person is such that an idea comes to the mind, and that idea leads to another idea, that leads to another, that leads to another. Likewise, it's a coupled process from one idea to another. And now the thought generation process is going through a stressful situation where stress-related thoughts are looping like this. This is known as the mental volitional loop, where when a person comes to a stressful scenario, the thought process re-engage with the stressful thoughts. And in accepting the stressor now, the person should originate a new thought and inject into the mental volitional loop. This new thought is an accepting thought of the stressor. From the accepting thought, a thought cycle will have to be generated so that the acceptance, these thoughts are supporting the acceptance of the stressor. And let it run, the volitional loop, you can allow to run with this new thought which is towards accepting the stressor. So you may generate it yourself, or you may need advice from someone to think of a new thought like this. Some people, when the stress levels are very high, they are unable to generate such a new thought on their own, so they need support. But many people will not need such a support, and they can do it by will. Because this is an inside job, internal job. You can handle it yourself. I will suggest some thoughts which are suitable for this purpose. A thought like impermanence. Understanding the impermanence is the law of the nature. And a thought like that the change is inevitable in nature. Look around, you can see change is inevitable. We can never stop change in the nature. And accept the pandemic as a natural phenomena happening under these laws. Pandemic is a natural phenomena. It is not an abnormality. It is normal in natural settings. Pandemic is not an abnormality. I am showing these thoughts because such a thought can be the one that you inject by force into the mental volitional loop. Or thinking of the pandemic as an eye-opener, or thinking of its positives. There are many positives you can think of. Those ideas I gave in the previous slide are just suggestions. For adaptation purpose, you can generate suitable thoughts of yourself rather than those suggestions. To suit your mind, please come up with your own ideas that leads towards acceptation of the stressor. Then about the adaptation to the stressor, further thoughts, further enhancements on those thoughts are necessary. Not only the thoughts, some actions will be necessary in the adaptation. In the thinking process, during the adaptation process, the stressor could be thought of as an opportunity. Some people think of such disturbances as opportunities to come up with great ideas and change the life in a new direction. And why not exploit? Why not exploit the scenario? Whenever there is some inevitable change due to impermanence, some of us can exploit that itself to bring the success to a higher level. But that needs a total new way of thinking. The previous methods may not apply anymore. And adapting a new lifestyle may be necessary. So lifestyle changes. You can engage your mind in such thoughts. And being simple and being more conservative could be an approach. Could be an approach in the lifestyle initially. So these are only just suggestions, and I think you are capable of coming up with more brilliant suggestions yourself to help the mind, help the thought process towards adapting to the stressor in such a way that it won't be a stressor anymore. It won't be a stressor anymore. In accepting and adapting approach towards a modified or a new lifestyle, there are 11 different mental well-being management techniques for you to use, and the proper combination we will have to adapt to our situation. Let me give you the list of techniques available as a summary. You can see the summary. Suitable combination you have to decide to mix with your lifestyle with proper time management. But for a short time during lockdown or social distancing, certain options may not be available, like spa, therapy, and for the moment you can leave them out. Later on you can add. But all other things can be mixed. The proper blend, proper mixture, the person has to decide. I am just making the summary, making it easy for you to choose. The time management is the most important. Keeping sufficient breaks are very important, especially for this the mental well-being. Filling up the whole day with lots of activities is very bad. And in fact, it is an avoidance technique rather than adapting techniques. So make sure between activities you plan sufficient breaks. And to maintain the body active, the exercising. However limited the space could be, during lockdown, the exercises will be very important. Please mix it. And proper use of music at appropriate time. For example, when you need relaxation, you can choose and listen to relaxation music. Whenever you want to enjoy, you can choose to suit your taste type of music that you can enjoy. And there must be a certain time for that in your mix-up of the activities. And hobby. And that depends on the person. Do something that you enjoy, something available that you enjoy, or invent a new one. And to mix with the nature, although we may be limited in movement, growing plants, especially food or fruit, and seeing them grow and nurturing them will be very good for the mental well-being, mental health. And these two, the yoga and meditation, they are very strong techniques towards the mental health management, stronger than the others. And yoga may use mind-body coordination, and meditation will directly use the mind and will alter the mental thought process in a very effective manner. let me discuss little bit on that before we finish. So before we move out of this slide, but I would suggest that you keep this as a checklist and make sure that these activities are properly mixed in a time management chart or method. And what I have suggested here are just few suggestions, but you can keep adding things there. Let's look at little bit on this. The rule of the human mind is that if a particular set of thoughts are repeatedly engaged and more frequently used and occupied in the mind and the thought process will bend towards it. But we have to be careful about this because it has the principle of duality. Duality in the sense, if the set of thoughts are bad thoughts, the mind and the thinking process will bend towards worse scenario. If the set of thoughts are good thoughts, like in meditation, the mind will bend towards mental well-being. This is the rule is common for good and bad. That's why the duality is there in that principle. And we use this principle for good, for mental well-being, by designing a set of thoughts, and repeatedly engaging in the mind or frequently using it in such a way that the mind and the thought process will slowly bend towards those good thoughts, which will relax us and which will help drain out any kind of stress hormones that have been mixed with the blood. And that kind of a thought process will completely revitalize the PNEI system that we discussed earlier. How can we do this? How can we identify what are the good set of thoughts? You have to choose from a meditation thought like loving kindness or breathing meditation. That will be a different discussion if we move on to. Therefore, I will leave it open, any suitable meditation thought, and make it like the self-talk in such a way that the meditation thought generated within the mind, within the mental process, and repeatedly saying it to yourself, not loudly but silently within the mind. Let this loop run. This is you yourself in duplicate I have drawn. So you are saying to yourself as a self-talk. Mostly it happens in a silent way within the mind. And this one is the mental volitional loop. And when we repeatedly engage, the thought process and the mind will bend towards that meditation thought. And we choose the meditation thought in such a way that it gives kind of a deep cleansing or deep relaxing effect. And during that meditation time, you will find the PNEI system completely revitalized and has a very good cleansing effect. And it happens within such a short time compared to the other techniques. So, for those who like meditation, it will be the best practice in adapting to a new lifestyle. Meditation will greatly help. That's all from me. Thank you so much for listening to the end, and I hope these ideas will be made use of towards taking your life to new dimensions and happiness. Thank you very much.